Okay, so thank you for joining me for my first effort at my marketing for the self-published author presentation. This is a slideshow that I have created for a junior author audience, I guess, if you're new to publishing. If you're a more experienced publisher, some of this will be a good refresher. But probably your questions will come more at the end of the presentation, like the what next steps. So I have a bunch of my Romance Diva friends here on the Hangout with me to try this presentation out, and we'll see if they have any questions. And if you are watching this later on YouTube, after it's been on live, feel free to email me at zoeyorkwrites@gmail.com if you have any questions. Okay, so marketing for the self-published author, getting your books discovered. So marketing isn't everything. Marketing doesn't magically make your book start selling. It's one facet of a well-run business. And in order for marketing to be effective, your business needs to have strong products, a good production team, and when you're a writer, that's really just you. You need to be a strong producer. You need to have good distribution channels. If you've written books and you only have them in paperback, for example, you need to explore ebooks, etc. And of course, there's all sorts of other business factors that change for each writer, but marketing is one piece of the puzzle. It takes time. This is something which you might not realize when you first look at a really successful author, particularly someone who looks like they've just come onto the scene or they've just had a breakout book. But branding happens in layers, and what works for others might not work for you yet because you might not have the infrastructure in place to make that marketing tool effective yet. So what my presentation is about is how to put that infrastructure into place and to focus on production that's aimed at being marketable. So how do you create a marketable line of books? And it means writing, so it means writing a lot, it means writing well. And I don't talk about craft in this presentation, but that doesn't mean that writing craft isn't important and isn't a key part of having a successful product line. Okay, so these are the 7 rules I'm going to go over. They're not like carved in stone or anything. As I work on this presentation over the next couple of months and trial it with other groups, they might change. I might tweak them. I might add some. I might take some away. But these are the 7 that I have come up with that I feel you need to hit all of these points in order to maximize marketing your books to your readers and to future readers. So today we're going to talk about writing series, understanding the market, hanging on to fans as you make them, how you keep writing and what you should be writing, branding, getting reviews, and then, and only then, after all of that, how do you spend some money and do some marketing? Okay, so rule number 1, write series. This is something that I'm going to say over and over again throughout the presentation, but it's really hard to market a single title. There are some people who do it, and it's very tempting to look at an exception and say, but I want to be like that person. I want to have the breakout book. But hoping to be an exception is not a business plan. And the vast majority of people who are successful at writing and successful at selling books are not like that exception. They don't have a single title. They have many titles. Those titles are tied together in a single world and branded as a series. And with each successive release, their business grows. So repeat after me. Write a series. Okay? Readers love familiar worlds. And if you write single titles, if that's truly what your author voice is and the stories that are in your heart and in your head, then find a way to tie them together. Do they exist in the same worlds? Can you brand them as a series even if they don't have characters that cross from one title into the next? Do they have other things in common? Common themes, common elements that you can promise to your readers, if you like that, then you will like this. And if you can do that, then that's just the same as writing a series with interconnected characters. It's not just readers that love series, retailers do too. Both iBooks and Kobo, they rarely merchandise single title books. They like sell through to other books as much as smart authors do, and they really won't give you a whole lot of time until you have probably 5 to 10 books out. Not necessarily all in the same series, but that helps. I remember when I started writing, I reached out to Kobo because I'm Canadian and Kobo is primarily a Canadian retailer. And I said, I'm a Canadian author. I write Canadian romances. You should feature me. And they said, okay. Actually, our merchandising is editorial, and we make decisions based on many factors. And they brushed me off. So I didn't contact them again. And this past summer, a writer friend of mine said, why aren't you doing more with Kobo? And I said, well, I asked them, but they didn't. I asked them, but they didn't have any time for me. But that was last year. And this year, we had a very different conversation. I wrote a marketing plan, and I emailed it to the people at Kobo, and they were all over it. So the difference was that I had more titles. The difference was that I had a full series as opposed to just 1 or 2 books. And I had more experience. That's part of that infrastructure that I talked about. I had a product line that they could push. Now, last year I didn't. Does that make sense? Anybody following? Any questions at this point? Okay. If you write single title books, particularly in science fiction or fantasy, then Amazon is more interested in those than the other retailers, and that's why, for example, in science fiction, you see a lot more Amazon exclusive titles and authors that take advantage of the KDP Select program. That's not something I know a lot about, but it is something that I'm exploring a bit with my Seals series and my Vikings in Space novella. So I'm not an expert on that, but I understand that it is genre dependent and your mileage might vary. Okay, rule number 2, know the market. There's 2 pieces to this. There's content and there's price. So content first. Pick your most marketable product to promote. If you have a couple of books, if you're not a brand new author, but you've written a bunch of different projects and you have them all out there and none of them are particularly doing anything, don't just do like a shotgun approach. Analyze the products that you've created and figure out which one is closest to what the market wants and focus on that. If you have 4 books and they're all completely different and you're like, well, I have to develop series, plural, pick one. Pick your most marketable title and build a series on that one first. Focusing on one thing is a much more successful endeavor than trying to focus on a billion things. Note that if anybody goes to look at my Amazon page, they'll note that I have 4 series. So this is more of a do what I say, don't do what I do situation. I totally understand the threat of plot bunnies and the temptation to do it all, but there's only so much time in the day, particularly if you're working part-time, or if you're working full-time and you're only writing part-time. So focus on one thing. It's very hard to sell books that don't have a clear genre. So if you when you're asked to describe your book, and for any book you need to have an elevator pitch, a tagline, you need to be able to tell me what your book is in about 10 seconds. And if the first thing that comes out of your mouth is, well, it's sort of like this and it's sort of like that, figure it out. Pick one. It's okay to have 2. It's actually great to have 2 genres, but you need to be able to say, in a nutshell, what your book is. If you can't, then that's probably a problem with the product. It's not an insurmountable one, but it's something that you want to figure out, because if you can't nail down what it is, then a reader won't be able to nail down what it is. And the thing about readers is they like something that's familiar. Okay, so figure out what it will be familiar to them, what it will be similar to a reader. What the comparables are, and brand it thusly. Okay, it is. Again, this is a moment where some authors say, but what about, Stephen King gets to write whatever he wants. Well, that's because he's Stephen King. He's the exception, right? Exceptions are not a business plan. The other thing is that most promotional tools are discounts, and profit comes from sell-through. I'm going to say this over and over again. So write series, right? And in order to do that, you want the whole series to be marketable. to that end, when I say, know your genre, it's okay. It's good if a book fits into 2 genres. It's not good when it doesn't fit into any genre and it kind of sits halfway between 2. So billionaires are good, cowboy billionaires are good, rich guys who live on a farm and don't ranch, that's confusing, right? And we can talk a little bit more about that at the end when things fit neatly into genres and when they fall in between. This middle point, I think, is I'm preaching to the choir here to anybody who's a romance diva, but this is more a point for writers that I meet in real life, and they focus on paperbacks. Embrace ebooks. It's a marketplace that you have an almost level playing field with big publishers, and understand the ebook market. So spend time looking at the different retailers and how they categorize books and what books get to the top 10 or top 100 list. Look at Google Play, for example. Understand that if that's a market that you want to get into, and it's hard. I struggle selling books on Google Play for sure. It's all about keywords and specific keywords, and so go look at the top 100 list there and see how those descriptions are constructed. They have keywords in the description at the bottom, so it's not presenting your book isn't the same on every retailer. You want to do that on Amazon, but you would on Google Play. This last point is one that some writers really bristle at, so I want you to hear it with an open mind. You might be your biggest fan, and I hope you are your biggest fan. I'm definitely my biggest fan. When I write my books, I love them, and when I read them back, I love them. But you aren't your best customer. Writers are hypercritical. Writers have very high standards. Writers want something new and unique and different. Readers, particularly voracious readers, they want more of the same. They want something comfortable and familiar and understandable, and they're not thrilled with unique and different. They are not thrilled with a weird take on something. One of the best examples is that I recently wrote a Virgin Hero book, a Virgin Navy SEAL, and when I posted that on Facebook, readers, so here's the difference between social media, and we're going to talk about social media in a second. Facebook is where readers are. Twitter is where writers are. I post Virgin Navy SEAL on Facebook, and readers are like, really? What do you mean? I post Virgin Navy SEAL on Twitter, and all of my writer fans are like, oh my God, gimme, gimme, gimme. It's something quirky. Writers like quirky, and readers don't. The other thing about writers versus readers is that readers read a lot more than writers do. I'm actually a pretty voracious reader. I read 100 books a year, easy. I always have a couple of books on the go. I read every single night. I read more than almost any writer that I know. And I notice a difference in how I think about books versus other writers. And I think that it is an important writing skill or a marketing skill to be able to set aside that hypercritical writer eye, put on a reader hat, and look at how your book compares to the other books in the marketplace. Okay, the other half of rule number 2, understanding price. So series benefit from a sales funnel. Loss leaders hook readers in. There's a couple of different ways to do loss leaders. There's 99-cent books. There's free books, either a short-term free run or a longer free run. That's often in the industry, the indie industry, called perma-free. A perma-free isn't necessarily a book that is permanently free, but it is longer than a 5-day KDP Select free run. So a sales funnel is a series that starts with a free book or a 99-cent book, and then the prices gradually increase. So you can see an example would be free 99 cents, $2.99, $3.99, $4.99, or even just more simply free 99 cents and then $3.99 across the board, or whatever. The price is often length dependent and genre dependent. I'm not going to tell you whether it's a good price for your book because it's very reader-based specific. But it's important to understand the royalty rate differences, that a 99-cent book, for example, on Amazon pays 35%, whereas a $2.99 book pays 70%, and the difference on that single sale is 35 cents of income versus $2 of income, which is huge. So understanding that volume, you need to sell a much greater volume of books at 99 cents to equal the income of a more moderate volume at a higher price book. So if you do a loss leader, if you do a sale, you want it to have a marketing purpose, right? I've done just one day 99 cent sales. They don't make me any money. And if they're not done with a marketing purpose, then it's like a kind of a weird glitch in my sales bump on my sales chart, and doesn't really do anything. Okay? The good news about price is that the market really has no memory. So it doesn't matter if you try a 99 cent thing and it doesn't work, because in a couple of days nobody's going to know. The only people know will be other authors who track your sales. And 99 cents, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. It's very genre specific. So this is another reason why you need to know your genre. Rule number 3, hang on to new fans. Okay? This is tricky to wrap your head around. Some people feel like they're posers creating a mailing list and a fan club before they have any fans. But if you don't build it, then they can't join it. And if you wait to build it, then you will have missed some people who want to join it. Okay? So don't wait until you have fans, build it, and they will come. The 3 ways that you can hold on to fans are a mailing list and a newsletter, and that's number 1. It's most important. Various aspects of social media. Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, Instagram, Tumblr. I'm on all of those to varying degrees. The only one that really makes me money, I would say, is Facebook, because I write romance. But Twitter is very useful for networking. Twitter is where I learn about the industry. I follow editors, I follow agents, I follow other writers. So I like Twitter, but Facebook is where I make money. Facebook is also where I house my reader group or my fan club or my street team, whatever you want to call it. And I prefer to host it on Facebook as opposed to on my own website. Some authors have forums on their own website, but that requires a reader, like a super fan, actually going to your site, seeking you out. Whereas on Facebook, if you post something in your reader group, it passively connects to them because it shows up in their newsfeed, right? Facebook is where they are. So if you don't like Facebook, then I would highly recommend getting over that and pretending that you do. I do not love Facebook. I do love that Facebook connects me with my readers, right? So as long as you understand that you're there for a purpose and it's connected to your business, then it's maybe more tolerable. Now, you've created those 3 different ways for your fans to connect with you, but you need to tell them about that. So how do you tell them about that? In your product packaging. Not just your front and back matter of your books, and I suggest you put all of this in both of those places, front and back matter, but also think about the other ways that you can tell them about these different ways to further connect with you. So if they're on your mailing list, include in your newsletters a button to your fan club on Facebook. If they're in your fan club, every so often remind them that you have a newsletter. You would be surprised how many people only connect with you in one place. Okay, rule number 4. Be patient and write. Easier said than done. Most series break out between books 3 and 6. For me, I saw bumps in both places. So my 4th Boredom title, which was my 3rd novel, that was when I had a nice income jump from very part-time income to really nice part-time income. And then I saw another big bump with my 7th Boredom title, which was my 4th novel, where I went from really nice part-time income to a solid full-time income. And I'll show you the growth of my series in Appendix 1 at the end. It's also important to understand average sales. We see people, like in the, you see a Washington Post article about Russell Blake, or the Wall Street Journal about Russell Blake, or you see Jacinda Wilder and People, and you think, wow, so that's what it's like to be a successful self-published author. No, those are the crazy outliers. What it is to be a successful self-published author is that you have a solid backlist, that sells every single day a few books to fans and new fans, and your mailing list slowly grows. You know, somewhere between 20 and 100 new people find you every month and join your mailing list, and with each release, you have slightly better and better and better releases. And it doesn't sound like very much, but 2 to 10 books a day per title within a couple of years, when you've got 10 to 15 titles out, is full-time income for almost anybody in North America or around the world. There are very few places in the world where I couldn't live on the income that I make now, and I'm nowhere near an individual bestseller, although I've certainly been involved in best-selling projects. So the math is that for an average author, even an average good author, you need a lot of books to support yourself full-time. Your first book isn't going to be your best book. My first book is really good. I really like it. Readers really like it, but it's not perfect. That's okay. You don't need to write perfect books. Nobody expects you to write perfect books. But you do want to continually improve. You have to work on your craft. If you're constantly improving, you're going to grow your fan base, because your fans are going to think this was the best Zoe York book ever, or this was a really good Zoe York book, or whatever, right? And they're going to tell people about it. You don't want to just keep reproducing the same level as you did with your first book. You want to keep growing and getting better. And that might mean starting a new series at some point, and I'll talk a little bit about why I did that as well. The last point is that you should be patient and keep writing, because discoverability takes time. Those layers that I was talking about, layering in, figuring out what tools work for you, and finding enough people to make that a worthwhile effort. There's no point in posting a giveaway on Facebook if you only have 20 followers, because you could just give all those 20 followers a book. But once you have 1,000 followers, then a giveaway makes more sense. So it takes time to build up that reader base to market to. And understanding why it's so hard in the beginning, at least for me, and I hope for you, it makes it a little less crazy making. So I don't know whether or not this link is clickable, but if you Google, and I'll post the link places, I guess I'll post it maybe in the YouTube description of the video when I'm done. Oh, maybe I'll see if I can do that YouTube clicky thing. If you Google Courtney Millan's Regions of Discoverability, you'll find, and it's open to anybody, you don't need to be a member, a post on Kboards. Kboards is a writing forum. Well, it's actually a reader forum, but it has a nice writer's cafe in it. And Courtney Millan is a best-selling author who has detailed why the whole post came up, because for some people, perma-free books, offering a free book one in the series for a while, it works better for some people than it does for others. And so she put some thought into why that is, and came up with this really clever idea that, oh look, Lynn posted it in the comments on the Hangout. Thank you, Lynn. So came up with this really clever analysis that there are 4 regions of discoverability, and a brand new author is in region 1, and then an author that has a couple of books out and is starting to find their place in the market is in level 2, and then region 3 is when you have a nice reader base and you're growing with each release, and all of a sudden it gets easy. Now, what's scary about that is that it takes a long time to get to level 3, a long time. And I'll show you my release chart and how I built my series. And I will say that right now, I really feel like I'm just moving from region 1 into region 3, just now. So you have to be patient, and you have to keep producing, and you have to have faith in yourself that this will work, because it is not an easy overnight thing. And then you have to choose the appropriate marketing strategy for your level. I actually don't remember from the thread when Courtney says that perma-free will work. I think that perma-free works right from the beginning of region 2. Rule number 5, tight branding. See my books? Aren't they pretty? They're so pretty. These are not the books that I first branded. These are not my first covers at all. These are my fourth round of covers for the Warden series. And my branding changed a lot over the last year and a half. Okay, so here are some hard questions to ask yourself. How sexy are your covers? I don't mean literally. They don't all need to have naked people on them. Here you can see, well, that one's pretty sexy, and this one's kind of sexy, and this one, but this one's not. And this one is probably by far my favorite cover, although I really like Chase and Mari's cover here too. But they're sexy in a more figurative way, right? They make people's fingers itch to start reading the book. Do your covers accomplish that? And if not, think about changing them. Never be ashamed to say that branding didn't work. No company that I can think of, no successful company, no successful author, no successful cereal company or car company has the same branding that they started out with, right? Branding changes all the time. You're a business person, change your branding. So take a look at the top 100 books in your genre. The top 100 books changes constantly. What readers are buying now is not the same thing as what they were buying 6 months ago or what they will be buying 6 months from now. Don't be afraid to admit you can do better. Okay? So not only have I changed Wardham 4 times, but I've changed my Pine Harbor covers twice already, and those books have only been out for 5 months. 4 months. Not even 5 months. I can't count. I actually changed my Seals Undone book twice before it even came out. Okay. Reviews. Rule number 6, reviews. It's very hard to market without reader reviews and without that stamp of approval from other readers for new readers. It's important to understand numbers. Again, a good average for organic reviews is that you get 1 review for every 100 paid sales and 1 review for every 1,000 free giveaways through a retailer site. So if you're going to get reviews to get those paid sales, you have to understand that they're not just going to come organically from putting your book out there into the ether. Not to mention, there are millions of books out there in the ether, and you might not get those sales at all. So you need to distribute review copies, and you need to do it widely. Now, you will hear other authors, really successful authors, say they don't distribute advanced review copies. And that makes sense for them at the marketing level that they are at. They market differently, right? As a brand new author, you don't have the luxury of saying, I don't want my advanced review copies out there because I'm afraid of piracy. Piracy is not the biggest threat to your business. Not being seen is the biggest threat to your business, right? So here are some different options for distributing review copies. NetGalley. NetGalley is it's a really great service. It costs some money. There are lots of authors who do co-ops. So ask around, find out if you know somebody who has a co-op spot that you could rent. You only need a week because the review requests drop off really quickly. I put my books up for about 5 days, and then I swap out another title. A week of NetGalley should cost you like about $25, maybe even less, depending on the co-op and how their pricing is set up. Goodreads groups. Finding the right Goodreads group for you will take a little bit of time. Note that this is different than a formal Goodreads giveaway, which has to be a paperback. But you can find Goodreads groups in your subgenre that do review copies. You don't need to be an active member of most of those groups. They're keen for authors to come and offer advanced review copies. And so that's something that's really genre specific, but if anybody has any questions at the end, I can try and help you find a group or a couple of groups for you. Facebook groups, same things. If you write BBW romances, then the Curvy Gals group is great. If you write shifter romances, then the Wolfpack group is great. Ask around to other authors and find out what Facebook groups they've had successful ARC offers too. Your mailing list. I don't do this anymore, but for about 6 months I did. I offered review copies to my entire mailing list, and about 10% of them will take you up on it. So for me, when I had 600 people, I distributed about 60 review copies to my mailing list. Over time, I have shifted those review requests into my reader group because it's a smaller, more enthusiastic group, and it's just easier to manage that way. Previous readers, anybody who's ever reviewed your book, feel free to send them an email and offer them a review copy of your next book. And then dedicated review teams, which is kind of where I've ended up now, but it's not the only way to do it, for sure. So distributing advanced review copies is not without some risk, but I use the word risk really lightly here. Honest critical reviews do happen. They're good. Critical reviews do not hurt sales. I have 1-star reviews. I have 2-star reviews. I have reviews that say that I am a terrible writer and my work is a piece of trash. That has not stopped my sales at all. I have more reviews that say it's awesome. So don't be afraid of bad reviews, even though they hurt. They hurt a lot, like you'll want to drink. But that's life. And then the other risk is piracy. And honestly, I understand why some authors hate it. I understand that it takes a lot of their time to combat it. But as a debut author, it's not a barrier that I would worry about. And we can talk a bit more at the end. I don't want to be like, I'm not like pro-piracy or anything, but it's a non-issue when you're a debut author. All right, last point. Rule number 7, spend money wisely. So there are a lot of ways that you can waste money in marketing. There are a lot of ads that aren't worth their investment. There are some really good ebook deal lists that you can get. You need to have reviews to get them, hence rule number 6. But the ones that work really well, Book Club, My Romance Reads, eReader News Today, they're worth doing, but they're worth doing when you have a purpose to that marketing plan, right? A 99-cent ad is a great idea when you have 1 or 2 other books to push through to. A free ad is a great idea when you have 2 or 3 or more books to push through to. Facebook ads are also useful. They're constantly changing, and it's actually a pretty high investment of time to learn how to use them. But I can certainly share some tips about what's working right now. I don't put any tips into the slideshow because it's constantly changing. The best thing that you can do is pay attention to the side of your screen and see which ads catch your eye, and then duplicate that. Duplicate it like really closely. All of my best ideas I've stolen from other people. That's like that should be like rule number 8. Steal good ideas from other people. I'm going to add that to the slideshow. And that's really it. Until you have hit the highest level of brand recognition, any other investment of money, swag and ads on romance-specific sites and that sort of thing, they're not good because those are all about name recognition, right? And getting people to click because they recognize that name, and they're not going to recognize your name for a long time. People don't recognize my name, and I'm still like waiting for that. So that's why it's really important to understand what Courtney Milan is talking about in those regions of discoverability. And wait until you've got a series for sell-through. Write a series. I put that in caps. I'm going to keep saying it until you spend any money other than maybe on some brand new stuff. Okay, once you've gone through those 7 rules and you're like, okay, I've got the basics down pat, then this is what all comes next. So some of these things might be the questions that you've been hanging out to hear, and you might be thinking, oh, but why can't I do that now? All of this should wait until you have that basic foundation. Data analysis, looking at your sales numbers and figuring out what they mean. When you've only got 100 sales a month, it's really hard to know what your returns mean, right? You could have like 5 or 6 returns on 100 sales, and you might think, oh my God, I've got a 6% return rate. That's awful. That's not statistically meaningful, right? So wait until you've got a significant amount of data before you start analyzing it, or you're going to drive yourself crazy. One thing that you can do right off the hop is start collecting additional data with Smart Links and affiliate income. Although with the affiliate income, you need to have a reasonable following before Amazon will give you an affiliate account, but it's not huge. Reviewing and revising your product line. There's a balance here. Like earlier I said, make sure your branding is tight. So if your branding isn't tight, then revise absolutely right away. But you might also want to give it a little bit of time and just keep that rebranding in the back of your head. Wait for more data and figuring out exactly how you should rebrand. I'll show you in a minute the rebranding that I've gone through, and I'll show you the steps that I could have skipped.
it's not just rebranding that you might also want to revise. It's also possible that after a few books, you might go back and you might re-edit your first book. Now, there are pros and cons to here. That's an investment of time that you might not get back. I've certainly heard Roxy Rivera say, and she's an absolute genius, move forward, just write the next series. And she's not wrong. But if your first book in a series is weaker than the subsequent books, it might be a worthwhile investment to improve the first book so that then you can remarket that whole series. Okay? And then sometimes you're going to just say, okay, I'm going to write a new series. I'm going to build a series from the ground up that's just more commercial, more written to market, more, I know, now that I know better, I'm going to do better. Right? So that's a judgment call. The other next step is expanding your reader base. So you're going to market your books, you're going to find some readers, and then how do you find even more? How do you go to the next level? Well, the next level of marketing comes from cross-promotion. One advantage that publishers have is that they put out books in lines. So readers don't have a problem moving from one author to a next. And like Harlequin Desire books, for example, they know that all Harlequin Desire books are going to be very similar. So they can be exposed to a whole bunch of different authors that way. Something that indie authors can and do is they make the same promise to readers with box sets and cross-promotion, saying this is like that. So figure out which authors write the same thing as you and befriend them. Like, find a way to do them a favor or join the same Facebook groups that they're in. Don't take, right? Figure out a way to give them something. Give them information or support or give it time as well and slowly build up that relationship. Because the best way to tap into a new reader base is to work with an author who has that reader base. But it takes some time. All of it takes time. But if you're aware of this now, then you can slowly build in that direction. The last point is one that I mentioned earlier as well, establishing yourself with retailers. Once you have a big enough product line and some sales records, and it doesn't have to be a huge sales record. You know, Kobo doesn't care that I didn't sell a ton before we started merchandising my books there. But it requires thinking more like a business person, coming up with a marketing plan and firm deadlines, setting up pre-orders, that sort of thing. Retailers like to see that you are a business person that they can trust and depend on to provide new content for their consumers. Okay, so we're at the end of my presentation, but here are two quick appendices. So this is me building my series, right? And I'll share this image more, like, so you don't have to like peer at the screen. But basically, it shows you that I started writing in I started publishing in mid-June, mid-2013. So in June 2013, and here we are coming up to the end of 2014, and I've projected how my series will further develop into 2015. So you can see that I only had 3 titles come out in 2013. When we're looking at the first series, which is the Wardham series, the lighter pink lines, those are novellas and short stories, and the darker pink lines are novels. And then this year, I've added 2 additional series. I also have a couple of other one-off books, but I don't include them on the chart because they're not actually marketable because they're one-offs. So I only focus on marketing my series, and any other additional sales I get on the one-off books is just kind of like bonus money. So you'll see that my Pine Harbor series, for one thing, no novellas, no short stories, only novels. And for another thing, you can look at the titles. The titles are more closely branded together. So if somebody just says, I'm reading Love in a Snowstorm, another reader who's familiar with Love in a Small Town will instantly know that they're in the same series. The other thing is that you can see how long it took for me to slowly build up that platform to have a full-time amount of sales. But then all of a sudden, it all kind of comes together. So you just have to be patient. All right, and then the last appendix is my covers. And you can see, so the top left picture These are my original covers with my pretty weak typography, super cute pictures, but those pictures, well, I love them, and they represented what I thought was inside my books. Didn't actually match the market. So when I say understand content and you are not your own best customer, I really love books that have couples on the cover. Love them hard, and I'm not surprised when I open them up and inside they're pretty steamy. But that my books were steamy was quite a surprise to people who picked up these particular books. So what I liked and what I wanted in my books was not necessarily what was most marketable. So then I changed the pictures, and actually in between these two groups, and I never took a picture of it because it didn't last very long, was I did this new typography, this improved typography on the original pictures, and I really like that. Those were actually my favorite covers, but they weren't favorites of readers. So then I swapped out the underneath pictures on the first 3 books to make them a little bit more clearly sensual, and you can see that I've kept 2 of those pictures in the series. But again, Where Their Hearts Collide, I've changed that picture now 3 times. And when I changed it again to have faces, you can kind of see in the background of the second iteration of Where Their Hearts Collide that I cut off their heads, and that book didn't sell very well when you couldn't see their faces. So my next rebranding is I'm going to redo the Beyond Love and Hate cover so that you can see faces, and faces really, for my particular reader base, really makes a difference. And some writers hate seeing faces on books. That's something I hear writers say all the time because they prefer to use their imagination. I think that we're far enough into the presentation now that I can safely say readers don't actually love using their imagination as much as writers do. So that's an important take-home lesson. Okay, and then the last thing is a screenshot of my What Once Was Perfect page on Goodreads. If you ever want to see the progression of branding for a book in your subgenre, go to Goodreads. All the old, there we go. All the old covers are saved for the most part on Goodreads, and you can see all the different. And they're actually missing one because I changed it. It was only I had the stacked curly typography. I had it on this image, and that was my favorite cover. But I only had it for a very short period of time, maybe a couple of weeks. Some of these cover changes were a bit of unnecessary effort, right? I could have skipped some of these steps. Now, it's the whole learning process, right? But if you look at some of my other books on Goodreads, you'll see that there aren't that many different covers because I learned to be more ruthless as I was looking at them. So you can skip some of those steps, but actually don't feel bad if it takes you. Let's see how many here do we have? 6. Don't feel bad if it takes you 6 covers to get your cover just right for your book because well, certainly that's how many it took for me. Okay, so well that's the end of my presentation. There we go, marketing for the self-published author. So I'm going to flip back to the Hangout now, and I'm going to stop presenting, and then you can see me in my noisy Starbucks. So if anybody has any questions, you can ask them in the chat window, or you can unmute yourself and ask. Oh, and thank you guys. There's some comments happening now in the chat window saying that it was helpful, so I'm glad to hear that. Does anyone have any questions about anything I said? Was anything not clear? No? Okay, so I'm going to stop the broadcast now. Thank you very much. If you're watching this afterwards on YouTube, you can email me at zoeyorkwrites@gmail.com, and I'm always happy